Coming to you from a totally safe indoor political rally, I'm RJ Balde, and this is the TRICHOMES Hashitout podcast. On this show, we feature conversations about trending cannabis topics. We also bring in industry insiders and influencers to discuss their point of view. In this episode, I'll be talking to Bryan Buckley about his personal experiences, as well as the experiences of those around him that motivated him to create a cannabis company geared toward veterans and mental health. We'll also talk about the importance of data and fact in the age of disinformation and more. Without further ado, it's time to hash it out. Today, I am joined by Bryan Buckley, military veteran, cannabis advocate, entrepreneur, and CEO and co-founder of the Helmand Valley Growers Company. Welcome to the show, Bryan.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
No problem, man. Now, where are you joining us virtually from today?
I am in San Diego.
San Diego. Okay. So you have not escaped the wildfire smoke, then, I would guess.
No, we've had some interesting days here and some really crazy looking sunsets, that's for sure.
Yeah. It definitely looks. I just recently watched Mad Max, and I was like, wow, this kind of looks like what my commute was to like Target the other day.
Yeah, I really thought it was gonna be like a rainy day one day, and I'm like, oh no, that's just from the fires.
Yeah,
so crazy.
Yeah. So like what's the scene look like now? Because I'm in Orange County, and we had a couple days where like the smoke was real bad. Like we had orange skies, we had like that super hazy sun. But it's sort of cleared out now for the most part, although like all of my weather forecasts still say there's smoke in the air. What's it look like over there?
I think pretty, like probably a little bit better just due to where we are. But yeah, it's still kind of like hazy out here. It just kind of reminds me, I grew up on the East Coast, and kind of reminds me of like a hazy August kind of cruddy day. And that's just what it looks like outside. Like it's gonna be like a massive humidity or whatever. Sure.
Now you're originally from like the northern part of the East Coast, right?
Yeah, just a town called Doylestown, Pennsylvania. So it's about 25 miles outside Philly. So
okay. Right on. Yeah, I'm originally from Michigan, so I'm from that side of the country.
Very nice.
Yeah. Now, how have you been? How has your 2020 been? Have you been safe? Has your family and friends?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking. Yeah, everyone's been is doing pretty well, both here in California and back in the Pennsylvania area. I think everyone just kind of been doing the correct things and just kind of taking it easy. And fortunately, nothing bad has happened to anyone that I know, which is great to hear. I mean, I've heard a couple stories of some people from friends of friends and some tough times, but we're doing pretty good here.
That's good. That's definitely good news. I always like to check in with my guests at the top of the show, just because this year asking the simple question of how are you doing holds a lot more weight than it usually does.
Oh yeah. No, it's 2020 is I just tell people, I'm like, you're living in history right now. So
we are literally writing the books, man.
Yep.
I almost want to enlist in like a grade school history class, maybe like 15 years from now, just to see like how this year will be remembered,
Yeah. No.
Or this era, I guess. Yeah.
Well, no, it's funny because my kids are 4 and my other one's about to turn 3 in December.
Oh, sure.
And I'm like, I just wonder what they're going to be asking us later down the road. Like, what was it like for us and what were we doing and everything? Because, I mean, we got our one in virtual school right now and all that stuff. And I mean, hopefully that ends. But it's going to be some interesting things to reflect on.
I'm glad to hear that you're getting through it. And I'm glad to see that you are, or hear that you're doing well, and that, everyone around you is staying safe with the fires, with the pandemic, and just with all the punches that 2020 has been throwing so far, man.
Yep, absolutely. All good.
Yeah. And I'm stoked that you're here to talk to me. Like I mentioned before we started recording that I am so stoked and fascinated by your experience and the work that you're doing and your story just in general. And, the work that you're doing specifically to focus on cannabis with veterans and with mental health, man. Like that is something that I find is truly noble and important work. And so I'm just stoked that you're here to talk to me, man.
Greatly appreciate it. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun interview.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. We've just recently passed the 19th anniversary of September 11th.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that you enlisted in the military at the age of 18 following the attacks on that day. Is that right?
Well, it was I started going to the ROTC program
Right. Okay.
after that happened. So I was 9/11. I was at the University of Massachusetts and I was playing football.
Mm-hmm.
And where I grew up in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, we had a very, very good football team called Central Bucks West, and usually like a top 10, top 5 nationally ranked football program. So during that, I was getting recruited to go to the Naval Academy. Really had no desire to serve in the military at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Was having a lot of fun at UMass, was doing well with football. But then after I saw what happened on that day, I literally looked at myself in the mirror and just said, it's time for me to go earn my citizenship. And finished out the season. I explained to the coaches afterwards what my intent was and transferred to Villanova University and got into the ROTC program. And then in 2004, I was commissioned as second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps.
Wow. Wow. Well, right off the bat, I have to say thank you for your service, man. 19 years later, it's just as poignant as it was.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I kind of reflect on it and think that was probably the day that our generation lost our innocence. You obviously had Pearl Harbor and things like that have happened, have been extremely significant. Mm-hmm. But to us, it was kind of just like, we're not as safe as we thought, and these things have happened. And now, like I said, I just think, unfortunately, it will happen with every generation, but I just look at it like you got to earn your title to be an American and our way of life. And, once again, we were challenged, and it's just amazing how many great Americans stepped up to meet that challenge and, keep this going and do what had to get done.
Certainly. Certainly. Now, I understand that you also started the Battle Brothers Foundation, and that's to help American veterans overcome personal, economic, and medical challenges. Can you tell me more about when and how you started that?
Sure. Yeah, we got that going I think in December 2016, we got our 501c3 status. Mm-hmm. And really the purpose of Battle Brothers Foundation was we just were seeing where there's a lot of these veteran nonprofit organizations that were kind of more geared towards active duty. I mean, obviously you have Wounded Warrior that does a lot of stuff for men and women who've been injured, but we just didn't really see too much out there for people who served their military and left and what was next. And it got really tough. And that's when you started seeing with the suicide and the opioid epidemic. Mm-hmm. So we just kind of came up with a plan of, all right, let's see how we can do to help out these veterans. So yeah, on the personal side, it's more of like a big brother, big sister, where you're partnering up with a veteran who has transitioned, and they're just there for you to kind of talk through problems and whatever it may be and share some experiences. Medical side, we focus on VA disability claims. So just want to make sure the vet is getting the disability rating that they deserve and get all the full benefits that they deserve. Mm-hmm. We also are able to send veterans who are suffering with alcohol or opiates or post-traumatic stress or all the above to treatment facilities, just to let them kind of take that knee, recalibrate themselves, and get back out into the fight. And then on the economic side, is helping that veteran find a job so that they have a sense of purpose like they did while they served in the military. And kind of actually the last part that kind of got tied on, and it's a kind of nice crossover to Helmand Valley Growers Company, was when we started looking at the potential of medical cannabis and how that could be a more viable alternative than the opioids currently being prescribed by the VA. Mm-hmm. And so we really started kind of diving into how can we do this research. And, we talked with members of Congress, and they kind of told us what their needs were in order to get medical cannabis federally legal. And they're like, go get data and go get American doctors. Mm-hmm. So in 2017, I was at a UCLA cannabis symposium, and I met Alon Blott from Niamedic. Oh, sure. And Niamedic has been around for at least over a decade. And a lot of their team have been researching medical cannabis for probably about 18 or so years now. Mm-hmm. So when I explained the story of what we were looking at to do to see if medical cannabis could help out with veterans suffering with post-traumatic stress, They said, absolutely. We've done a lot of this research already on our own. And we brought some American doctors on board. And we then started looking at the pricing of like, okay, how much will this research cost?
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, there's no way we can do this from like just strictly a nonprofit standpoint.
Right.
So we had Helmand Valley Growers Company ready to go. And that's when we developed a plan of we can do 100% of our profits goes back to our veteran medical cannabis research. We kind of looked at it as a way for the cannabis community to kind of, as a call of arms, to back what we're doing and help us, help out the community. And the first study design cost roughly about $45,000. And that all was paid from the profits from Helmand Valley Growers Company.
Oh,
and
wow.
right now, that study is sitting with an institutional review board or an IRB. And the significance of that is it means you've been approved by medical to do human trials on whatever you're trying to do. So we would literally be one of the first ones to ever achieve a private IRB to do medical cannabis research.
That's so dope. Now, can you tell me more about in terms of your work with Niamedic and getting this data together? I understand that you are gearing up to release that data. Have you released it yet, or are you still planning on releasing it? And I know it's the aim is sort of to answer what you said are basic yet critical questions. Now, what are those questions?
Well, so the big thing we have to, until we can just make the study design public, is we have to wait for the IRB to approve it. So we just did another round of protocols with them last week and submitted them. So we're kind of on standby to see if they say, hey, this looks good, you're approved, or we need you guys to change this up. But essentially, once we have it, we're going to pick about 60 veterans here in California. And it's more of an exploratory where we'll go in, they'll come in, they'll get a non-invasive physical, really go through their medical records, and then they'll get a recommended customized treatment protocol. And it's all going to be doing microdosing. So it really kind of depends on your endocannabinoid system, what will work best for you. And then after the first meeting, every 7 days for the next 3 weeks, they'll get a call back from a doctor at Niamedic and just kind of review with them of how they're feeling. It's going to be very journal intensive. So they can say, hey, I couldn't sleep this night, or I felt a little bit too much anxiety during the day when I did this. And they can kind of make little rudder steers left and right to really make that treatment good for them. And then once we kind of discover what genetics are working the best, we will go in and we're going to grow those. And then we'll come out and do a second study. And this will be with about 200 veterans in California. And we'll administer everything at this point through tincture and see how that works, take that information. And if that hits the way we think it should, we'll move into another state to do a retrospective study, which will be either Oklahoma or Michigan. And from there, it'll be about 50 veterans just to kind of validate what we did in California, same genetics, no deviation, so on and so forth. And we believe once that hits, then we can go back in front of Congress and raise the right hands and say, hello again, here's your data and here's your American doctors. Can we make this federally legal?
Yeah. Now, what is the reason for choosing to start in California and then move eventually to Oklahoma and Michigan?
Really, main part was just our location being here in California, and also a great byproduct is a heavily dense veteran population. So you have a really good pool to grab from. And the same thing with both Michigan and Oklahoma, very heavily veteran density to it. And just along with their cannabis laws, it would probably give us the best option to be out there and to get this done.
Gotcha. Wow. Now, so in addition to your work with Niamedic, you've also founded the Helmand Valley Growers Company, which you just mentioned. That was in July of 2018. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Got you. Now, the reason why I'm so stoked to speak to you during this time in particular is because, people who are listening may not know this, but September is Suicide Prevention Month. And Suicide Prevention Week was specifically from the 6th to the 12th of this month.
Yeah.
Now, you founded HVGC with a mission to, quote, put an end to the opioid addiction and suicide epidemic plaguing our nation's heroes. So can you tell me more specifically about what HVGC offers and what it means to you to run a company that is completely owned by disabled veterans.
Yeah, so right now we currently we start off really in the vape arena to get a foothold here in California. So we have, right now we have 6 products out on the shelf that have all been doing really well, and we have Super Lemon Haze and Sour Diesel, our sativas, our indicas, our Purple Kush and Afghanimal, and our hybrids are Purple Trainwreck and Headband. And we're about to have a 1-to-1 THC CBD to come out.
Nice.
And really why we picked those particular cultivars is those from feedback we had from veterans suffering with post-traumatic stress, they've been the most beneficial for them. So we kind of want to supply them with their needs of what they were looking for. And also, like I was saying before, it really helps us fuel our research because we're taking our 100% of our profits and putting it back towards that research. So it really kind of gets the brand out there with a soul, mission focused, and trying to solve a problem that we're all very well aware of. And, running this organization with, the other founders, guys I served as with the Marine Raiders with, it's amazing. And the term Helmand Valley Growers Company really comes from our time in the Helmand province in Afghanistan.
Gotcha.
When you were in our unit and you served there, you became part of what we called the Helmand Valley Gun Club. So you would get an Hvgc tattooed on you.
I see.
We're like, we really want to kind of find a niche for this company. I told people kind of some of the ideas was, regardless of what you think of him, the founder of Fox, Roger Ailes, there was a movie out about him called Divide and Conquer. And there's one moment in there where he's talking to Rupert Murdoch, and they're trying to figure out who is their target audience. And they're like, we'll go after everyone. And Ailes goes, well, listen, there's 6 networks out there that go after one base. We're going to go after a conservative base and own it. And he made Fox into a monster. And I'm like, so we can't be everything to everyone. But if we focus on our veterans, people will fall in line with it because, 2 things that bring this country together are children and veterans.
Sure.
So, and able to share the story of HVGC and kind of true meaning is really special to us because we just don't want that to kind of been a 10-year moment in time and it kind of goes away and no one remembers it. We lost a lot of great men over there, a lot of amazing sacrifices. And this is also our way of, really keeping that name alive and keeping it out there and being able to share our story. And even to the point, if you look at our logo, you'll see the cannabis flower, but we have 5 stars on it.
Yeah.
Those 5 stars are the Southern Cross constellation that you can only see in the South Pacific. And the Marine Raiders of World War II would use celestial navigation to get to and from the objectives. So we wanted to incorporate that where we've had brave men and women go forward to fight for us, and they might be back here physically, but maybe not all the way back spiritually. And here at Helmand Valley Growers Company, we want to be that guiding light to go let them live the American dream they fought so hard to defend.
Man, I love that. That is so awesome. Like to hear the meaning that you've put into literally like the details of the name and the logo and, just wrapped up with your overall mission of what you want to do with HVGC that's such an awesome story, man. Like I didn't even know, like I would have never guessed that those stars like had to do with like the celestial navigation that y'all had to do. That is so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like I said, it's a lot of fun, and like I said, it's a brand with a purpose and a soul and very mission oriented.
I love that, man. Yeah, I can definitely like gearing up for this conversation with you and doing my research. I could definitely feel that that passion and that will to help veterans and to help those who are dealing with PTSD or mental health issues, man. Like I could that translated through the screen when I was doing my research. That's so awesome.
Oh, that's great. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. So I understand that in 2015, that was kind of around the time that you personally started seeing more reports of suicide and opioid addiction in veterans. And then if I have this correct, it's in 2016 that a friend of yours told you that he was swapping out a fifth of Jack for a joint. Is that right? And he ended up being one of the co-founders of the company.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. That's Andy Myers, and he's actually our director of cultivation.
Nice.
But he was one of the ones where I saw it live and in color. where
Nice.
I just said to him like, hey, what you got going on? And he told me, he's like, listen, I gave up a fifth of Jack for a joint. And he's like, it's great. I am not drinking and driving. I don't black out. I get a good night's sleep and feel really refreshed in the morning. And then he's like, and just by cultivating, he's like, it's really helping me make my transition from a warrior to a gardener.
Wow.
And that's when we're like, okay, that's pretty powerful and something there. And that's when we're like, hey, listen, we just don't want to be a veteran advocacy group for medical cannabis. Like, we really want to try to make a dent and move the dial here. Sure. And that's when we said, like, if we're going to do this right, let's talk with some people in Congress and see what their needs were. And that's when they told us, they're like, you need to go get data and need to go get American doctors. And we got something. And fortunately, we were able to put that together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, this doesn't apply to you, obviously, but in thinking about, others, what do you think is the most effective method for getting people who may not really care too much about this issue because it doesn't directly affect them or someone around them? How do you get someone like that to get involved and to care?
I think when we just have an opportunity to sit and talk with people and we kind of express the way we're doing it and on the educational side and the passion that we have behind it, it's amazing how you start seeing people kind of start falling in line. And again, we're not just part of a green rush where we're out here trying to make a lot of money. We're trying to solve a problem. And that's really helped us differentiate ourselves from some others. And I've seen people in the beginning when we said we wanted to do this and we kind of had that proof of concept in 2016. I got some cocked eyebrows and people were like, you're doing what? But now as we've gone through and just, even things in our nation have changed where people are a little bit more accepting to cannabis and are seeing some of the benefits. I mean, heck, we're in the middle of a pandemic and we got deemed essential. I think we're really starting to win some hearts and minds. And, that's where I'm kind of looking at now. It's like, we just got to get that hard data. Like, numbers do not lie. If we can prove this, we got to turn some heads there at that point.
Yeah, totally. When it comes to the hard data and the weight of bringing that scientific data, to the hands of the people, so everyone has access to it, how do you feel about the current state of, I guess, disinformation, for lack of a better term? Because, while obviously, scientific data, scientific research is paramount. Like, I can't stress or underline the importance of science and scientific data, enough. There are people that, they might see that the hard data, they might see the science and still, question the science or question the information or the facts that they're given. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with people who, just choose not to believe the information?
Yeah, when you face that, you kind of look like, hey, we've done all that we can. I think that'll be more than minority. But there will be some people I think really dug in who are just like, no way. I dopers and this, that, and whatever it may be, and reefer madness. And, to me, you just work around these people. I mean, it's like, if they're that dug in where you're presenting them facts and they still won't believe it, you're never gonna make them believe it. So you just try to find the right group of people who understand what you're doing. You probably change some minds with some of them, and they can kind of advocate for you. And heck, I'm one of the first ones. I mean, I never even thought about cannabis during my life. I mean, it was just not something I was into. And obviously, going to the military, we don't touch that stuff.
Sure,
but just being on the ground floor and seeing what was going on to my fellow veterans. The VA, I think they do the best that they can with what they have, but they're kind of stuck with the current opiates. I think, when you see veterans taking 15 pills a day for maybe one or two issues, that's not a good thing. I mean, you're giving them uppers and downers and lefts and rights and then other things to counter those stuff. And that's just maddening where this plant, there's so much potential to it, and it might just be as easy as, just whatever the cannabis cultivar might be. And that might be all that individual needs for the day to get through and do what they have to do. And that's where I just think, you'll see the facts will be so overbearing that some of the non-believers are just going to, you just kind of look at them and say, okay, you are where you are, and that's where you're always going to be.
Right. And I'm glad that you pointed out that, for the most part, you see them as, not the majority of, it's a small group of people relatively. They may be very loud on Facebook, but it is important to remember that they are a smaller group. Which is optimistic to think about, I would say.
Yeah.
Your company operates in a very unique intersection of two subjects that, like we said, are still being questioned by some despite scientific evidence. And those are, the efficacy of medical cannabis and mental health. In addition to scientific research, what more do you think can be done to promote medical cannabis, both the existence of mental health and the importance of taking care of that just as much as physical health? And then you mentioned the VA and how they're relatively sort of limited to the opioids that they have to provide with to veterans. So how do we promote better care for veterans and access to this alternative medicine?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great groups out there that do kind of veteran forums who utilize medical cannabis, and they're able to get some vets some free medicine. I mean, we do participate in Senate Bill 34, which passed out here, I believe, about maybe 8 months ago, which was the Compassionate Care Act, where you can donate product to a dispensary, and the dispensary will give it to the veteran free of charge as long as they're enrolled in the SB 34 program. So those have been great ways. And I just encourage people to share their stories about what the plant has done for them. Being a veteran, I mean, listen, there's not going to be any medical data, and you're not going to probably have people saying, okay, I see the hard facts. But you might win them over with some emotion. They kind of see how you are and how your life was, and then how it has improved using medical cannabis. And that's what's been a big push for us. I mean, even with my own family, I mean, they've seen the difference it's made in my life, and they've changed their mindset on it. So I just think, doing those things and working little victories will add up to a lot, and will help with the normalization of medical cannabis.
Totally. Yeah, it's definitely through those who are unafraid to share their personal experiences, and especially in something like cannabis, which has been, historically has had this awful stereotype or stigmatization surrounding it. It really is through those people who are fearless enough to share their personal experiences, as well as promote, like we said, scientific data and education and advocacy that are really going to help move the needle and have helped move the needle so far to where it is, and will continue to move it to where it needs to be.
Yes. Absolutely.
So you mentioned that in your personal upbringing, like, you at first didn't really have too much experience with cannabis, and then going into the military, it's something that obviously is not accepted and not spoken about or touched. Did that sort of have to do at all, do you think, with your upbringing in Pennsylvania? Because I know when I was coming up in Michigan, it was not something that was really widely spoken about. It was like the thing that, like, the quote unquote slackers would, like, go to the bathroom to, like, hit a bowl and then come back to class or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I'm definitely a product of the DARE generation, and what they're, you look at where cannabis was, or marijuana, it's a Schedule 1 narcotic, and you got like cocaine's a Schedule 2, and you're like, what the heck? To me, it was just kind of like, well, I guess just stay away from that stuff. and then being an athlete, I just really never thought about putting smoke in my lungs or anything like that. So I just stayed away from, both cigarettes and cannabis. And, you go through the military and you kind of do your thing, and every now and then you hear about someone who had a hot urine test because they smoked some cannabis and they're gone. You're like, well, that was stupid. But then, like I said, when I got out, it was just kind of not anything I planned on getting into. But then I just started seeing, some of what was going on with the veterans in terms of, as we mentioned, the suicide and opioid epidemic, and then just seeing with my own eyes what it did for some of my friends. And then I just said, well, hey, I'm going to take the plunge and do it myself. And I got a great night of sleep out of it. And I'm like, well, maybe there's something here.
Yeah, no doubt. I think I don't know about you, but like personally, like I've been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to introduce people to cannabis for the first time, especially people who are from where I grew up in. And it more often than not, it's usually the sleep that I hear the most about. So it's funny that you mentioned that. Like, some people will say, like, a lot of people that I've introduced cannabis to, they'll be like, yeah, like I was kind of on the fence about it until like I slept really well. And I was like, I'm telling you, like, I have personal experience with insomnia, mildly, not too extreme, but that was one of the places where I personally, it really sort of shifted my focus on cannabis, was when I was like, this plant helps me so much better than any sort of like any sort of thing I can get off the shelf at Target or Walmart.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And like, what a great medicine is sleep, so if you,
for real,
take a couple hits off of whatever and it puts you down and you get a good 6 hours, that's amazing for your body.
Yeah. How did your family react initially when you told them that you were going into the cannabis industry?
My mom asked if I could get back in the Marine Corps. So
for real?
Yeah, she was kind of like, oh, like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
When I sat down and explained things to them, and they know, my type of personality, and the passion was there, and they're like, well, we're really excited to see what you can do with it, and they've been extremely supportive ever since. And I'm even kind of turning some heads there where they're starting to see things go as we're moving along, and they're pretty interested in all this. And like I said, I mean, tremendous amount of support from all of them.
That's cool, man. And they're still back in Pennsylvania?
Yep, all back there.
Shout out to the family.
There you go.
Like, growing up where I came from, where, I would have never guessed that a legitimate job in the cannabis industry was even a possibility ever in the near future. So you started Helmand Valley, we said July of 2018. So it's been a little over 2 years now. I would guess that you, in the course of your 2 years, you didn't really imagine that in your sophomore/junior year of the company that you'd be dealing with a global pandemic, did you?
No, and to be funny, I mean, our first sale when we partnered up with a company called Platinum Vape, who's been backing us, and our first sale went out February 2nd of 2020, and a month later we're in a pandemic. So it was kind of like, okay, what an amazing time to have your official launch. It's just like anything. I mean, in times of chaos, there can be some good that can come out of it. Mm-hmm. And it just, I always tell entrepreneurs, I mean, you just got to be agile and pivot a lot. And we started really having some very good success in the beginning when we were doing patient appreciation days, being in a store doing promos. Mm-hmm. But then with the lockdown, and really what dispensaries were doing was more or less where you'd go check in. Well, while you're there checking in, you tell them what you want and they'll bring it back up to you and slide underneath the glass. So we were not a very well-known brand. So we started looking at different ways we can get in front of people. So we started making what we call a virtual PAD, or we've actually trademarked it. It's called a VerPad. And we go there, we have a stand set up, and you'll go through pretty much like if you walked in to talk to one of us, we can explain our mission, our cultivars, and what everything's doing. Oh, nice. And then also have a QR code so you can get your promo and kind of go get your deal. Wow. And then we're just about here in another month or so, we're going to unleash our Generation 4 VerPad, which will be totally interactive. It'll be essentially kind of like an iPad based type of feature you'll see on a stand. And you can go there and touch screen and you can learn about everything on our research and all that good stuff. And we'll put it on your phones, everything. And it's just our way to stay engaged with people while we have to maintain some social distance. So this is kind of one of those things we had to adapt or die. And by doing this, it's really helped us out and we continue to grow today.
Wow, that's so cool. So that's a physical sort of that's a something that someone would go to a dispensary to find. They would find that VerPad there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we'll have things on Instagram and Facebook that you can see it on your phone, but also too the actual VerPad stand itself will be right there in the store. And it's real easy for the stores. They can unplug it, put it back in the closet, and then when we're doing a promotional event, they can plug it back in and let that thing go. And it limits their footprint in their store. We're not taking up space in case they're on a head count of how many people can be in at one time. And you also get a lot of people standing in line. So it'll be something that you can do while you're standing in line. You can learn more about Helmand Valley Growers Company and our mission.
Yeah, totally. That's such a cool resource. How has it been weird at all? Well, I mean, like everything's been weird with the pandemic, of course, but has it been weird in particular during the pandemic with this sort of, growing demand for cannabis products, particularly cannabis, like non-smokable products like vapes or tinctures or edibles? The pandemic has caused that demand to rise, while at the same time, a lot of companies have had to either temporarily close, they've had to furlough their employees, they've had to limit staffing, they've had to limit operations. How do you handle that? How do you handle a rise in demand with limitations on how you're operating?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think one of the interesting things, as many of interesting things have emerged from this pandemic, but we've found out that cannabis is pandemic proof. Like other companies shut down, we didn't. We were deemed essential. And we've actually been expanding during the pandemic. I mean, we just brought on 3 sales reps because the demands is starting to grow out there. So it's kind of backwards almost, where you talk to people who are doing more, normal jobs, if you will. They've been stuck at home or whatever, or they're just starting to get back to work, or they've been doing a lot of Zoom calls, where we've been on the ground doing all that we can, working with our partner dispensaries and making it happen. So it's been really kind of interesting on that side.
Yeah, everything is just so upside down, sideways, topsy-turvy.
Yep.
But, having gone through, or have now going through, I should say, in the present tense, this extraordinary circumstance of a global pandemic, how do you think that will prepare you for the future, especially having to deal with something like this so early in your company's history?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it just kind of reinforced, the phrase adapt or die, not to make light of the current situation, but you just can't sit there as a company regardless and just say, okay, we're happy, we're here, and that's it. You constantly have to look at ways to enhance your brand or meet the needs of the consumer. And like I say, if you sit there and get complacent, the world will pass you by. So like I said, the VerPad was a great step for us, and it was a really cool idea, and it could be something really different for the whole entire cannabis community. And I don't know, we just don't know what's going to be out there next, but that's kind of one of the nice things with our special operations background. We kind of, we can adjust and adapt and overcome when the unexpected comes at us.
That is true. That is very true. And also, on top of that experience, do you think that being in the cannabis industry just in general inherently makes someone more ready to adapt or make changes just because of the ever fluid state of the cannabis industry?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel people in the cannabis community, you're playing a game as they're making up the rules. I mean, things are changing constantly. So you gotta really be on top of it, make sure and like everything, you're hitting compliance and doing everything right. And again, you just never know. We're in such infancy here. Who knows what's going to change? And eventually this thing will go federally legal. And, what are the taxes going to look on that? And what are going to be some of the rules and all that stuff? So you just got to be comfortable being uncomfortable, for sure.
Oh, that is for sure. And you have certainly thrived in that environment and thrived again in this intersection of medical cannabis and veteran health and mental health. And I'm so glad to hear that you are doing so well during this time, especially so early in your company's history. And the work that you're doing with Niametic is again such a noble endeavor and such important work. And I thank you again, man. Like your work is so great, and it's been a privilege for me today to hear more about it.
Awesome. I really appreciate you spending the time with us.
Of course, man. Yeah, anytime. Now, before we go here, where can our listeners find out more about what you're doing, what you're up to, what Hvgc is up to, the latest? How do we keep up?
Yeah, I would definitely stay on top of our Instagram. We keep that updated daily. So you can find that at HVG Company. And you can also check us out on our website at hvgcompany.com. And like I said, we're very active. We keep it updated. We want to be as transparent as possible with everything that we're doing. And we just hope people just want to come along and on the journey with us and see what we do. Right on, man. I'm looking at the Instagram page right now. Latest post, working hard to get our products out to those who need it in these trying times. That's what's up. 100% of the profits go to veterans medical cannabis research, just to remind our listeners out there about that. Awesome. Right on, man. Well, thanks so much, Bryan, again, for taking the time to speak to me today. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I sincerely hope that you and your loved ones continue to stay safe down in San Diego, man. I appreciate that, and same to you. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. No worries, man. Yeah, hopefully once everything settles down, I'll make it down to San Diego one of these days, man. I miss it down there. Yeah, sounds good. Let me know. Yeah, will do. Right on, Bryan. Thanks again so much, man. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon. My thanks again to Bryan Buckley for joining me. If you are a member of the cannabis community and have a story you want to share with us, we would love to hear from you. You can reach the show at hashitout@TRICHOMES.com. You can help others find the show by taking a moment to subscribe to the podcast and write a review. You can also join the discussion with industry insiders and get your voice heard by joining the community at TRICHOMES.com and following us on all social media. Hash It Out is produced by David Fortin and presented by TRICHOMES.com. I'm RJ Balde. Thanks for listening.